a bad state. We saw in a report commissioned by the SLP team of consultants with Mr. John Peters, a renowned engineer, as part of the team, indicating that majority of the structure of St. Jude's were at 70%. However, after 2 years and millions of dollars spent by Reno and over $200 million in loan funding from the Saudi, a new government report indicates that the hospital is now at 50%. My dear St. Lucian, I ask, how is it possible that in 2022 the hospital was at 70%, but now in January of 2025 it is now at 50%? Did the report commissioned by the Labour Party with renowned engineers deliberately lie to the St. Lucian public? Or did Ms. Jade Brown and Mr. Silas Wilson in the interview lie to the public of St. Lucia about the stage of completion to date? Somebody along the line is lying to the St. Lucian public. Will the Prime Minister give us a breakdown of how much money has been spent by Reno in the first instance via direct award, and how much was the new contract under the Saudi funds? Will the Prime Minister tell us how much money to date has been spent by this Labour administration to administer Clorox and paint and complete the St. Jude's Hospital? The government, therefore, should be ashamed to rejoice over the handling of healthcare whilst hundreds of St. Lucians continue to die, sitting in wheelchairs and ordinary chairs in the hallways of our main hospitals due to lack of basic medication, lack of nurses and doctors and other medical professionals, and overworked staff. I will end by reminding the Labour Party that their seeming hope that they will win the next elections if they just open St. Jude's is both ludicrous and far-fetching. Because St. Jude's will not reverse the deaths of many St. Lucians who have died due to the lack of proper management of healthcare in St. Lucia. St. Jude's will not change the fact that right now as we speak, we have sick people sitting on a chair for over 2 to 3 or even 4 days at OKEU while waiting for a bed. St. Jude's will not change the fact that we have no medicines at the hospital, no Panadol, no ibuprofen, and we cannot even do a basic scan to help save a life. St. Jude's is not going to change the fact that over 400 people died due to COVID-19 in 1 year of the SLP being in government due to them putting politics over people. St. Jude's will not change the fact that OKEU has told people to stay at home if they are sick and do not come to the hospital. Even in the midst of COVID-19, the United Workers' Party administrations never once turned away anyone from any of our hospitals. St. Jude's will not change the fact that St. Lucians do not have health insurance and they cannot pay for basic health services, so they stay at home and die because they do not have money to go and see a doctor. And St. Jude's will not save Labour because people have had enough, and it is time for Philip J. Pierre and Moses Musa Jean-Baptiste to go. I thank you. We will now have a statement by the Leader of the Opposition and the Parliamentary Representative for Micoud South, Honorable Alan Chasney.
Thank you very much, Ms. Charles. To all our viewers, let me wish everybody a Happy New Year. It's unfortunate that I have to be addressing the media this morning on this very serious matter. But in the last couple of days, an incident has taken place that speaks to the security of our nation. When we find ourselves in a position where we have to question the impartiality, and the integrity of the leaders of our national security, it's frightening. It's made even more frightening on the basis of what has been happening in this country for the last 3 years. The level of homicides, unresolved crimes, and what clearly appears to be no response by persons of authority. We're given a tirade of words and promises that have amounted to nothing. What I'm going to speak of this morning may for some people be trivial. And some persons might even go as far as to say that it's personal with me. But I want us at all times to keep a perspective of the bigger picture. And that is, if the leader of the opposition, which is a constitutional position in this country, is going to be treated this way, then they have serious implications for the rest of our nation. I speak specifically about what has taken place in the last week, where 2 police officers were targeted by Richard Frederick in his weekly show. Targeted where he called out their names, and actually showed pictures of the individuals. In this tirade, he ordered that the Commissioner of Police would deal with the matter and have them removed from their offices. So what is alarming, frightening, is that within 4 days, the Commissioner of Police actually did it. Commissioner of Police wrote letters to these individual officers indicating to one that he's under investigation and that he's been sent on leave. The second officer, who happens to be assigned to me as my security detail, was transferred to Babonneau. No other information or contact was made with either one of these officers. I was never contacted. I was never informed. In fact, I've never been formally informed that my security detail is being transferred. Upon hearing this, I contacted the Commissioner of Police, and he was kind enough to come off leave and meet with me last week. After that meeting, and after a promise had been made to me that Special Branch, who are responsible for my office or my security officer, would have contacted me, as I speak today, no one from Special Branch has contacted me. I still have not received any formal letter indicating that my security is being moved. So if I'd like to take a moment, if I can, to read the letter that I sent to the Commissioner after my meeting with him on the Friday. The subject matter is the transfer of Corporal Harvey Taliam. I said, thank you for taking the time to meet with me at the police headquarters on Friday, the 17th day of January 2025, with reference to the sudden decision of the St. Lucia Rural Police Force to transfer my long-standing close protection officer, Corporal Harvey Taliam. I want to say that Corporal Taliam has been with me from the time I became Prime Minister. So we're speaking close to 9 years that Corporal Taliam has been with me. At that meeting, you represented that the head of the special branch ought to have discussed the matter with me before Constable Taliam's transfer, and that you would ensure that I would be contacted immediately. Regrettably, this has still not occurred. So I want to say that the precedence that has been in place long before I was involved is certainly a prime minister, a leader of the opposition, and judges in particular, who have security assigned to them, have a significant say on who that person is. And once the person is within the police force and is properly trained, it has been the standard practice that a prime minister, a leader of the opposition, or judges could choose the person they want. And unless there was a really good reason why that should not happen, that has certainly been the general practice. Given the current political climate and the brazen public admissions of interference into the business of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force by Richard Frederick, I remain suspicious that the sudden investigation into Officer Taliam, a man of principle and integrity who has a sterling record of public service, is no coincidence. This action by the Royal St. Lucia Police Force follows the immediate aftermath of orders to the Royal St. Lucia Police Force by the same Richard Frederick to discipline Officer Taliam. These orders were issued by him on a nationally televised broadcast less than 1 week before the transfer. One can find further support for this assertion by him repeatedly saying that he has files on private citizens and directs the police to carry out certain actions. Sir, this example of proven political interference into the Royal St. Lucia Police Force should be disconcerting to every right-thinking St. Lucian citizen. Please permit me to take this opportunity to remind you of your solemn duty to always act without fear or favor in the discharge of your duties. The maxim that justice must not only be done, but it must be seen to be done, pleads for application in this case. In essence, there are certain positions in our government that are protected by the Constitution. And again, I want to remind us that the Constitution is a contract that requires our consent as citizens. And in exchange for that consent, there are provisions within the Constitution that protect us, that make sure that this power that's being vested into the government is not used against any individual citizen. And so enshrined in the Constitution is checks and balances. And one of those sacred checks and balances is that there are certain positions within the government that are constitutionally protected, and that those positions are given autonomy, meaning that they can make decisions without having to consult politicians or to be beholden to any larger force. And fundamentally in that is that these individuals must understand, appreciate, and put into practice every day that their obligation is to the citizens of this country, and is to ensure that at no time that these powers are being used to abuse the civil rights of anyone in this country. And one of those positions is the Commissioner of Police, is the DPP, is the Auditor General, and is all of the permanent secretaries in government, who should never be fearful of being moved. But you see, in the circumstance that we have with our Commissioner of Police, which seems to be now the standard policy of this government, he's acting. And in acting in that position, he can be transferred anytime. The account provided by you for the treatment meted out to Officer Taliam at best includes significant breaches of the rules of natural justice and the process of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. Beyond the legal, moral, and ethical concerns of this investigation, I must also view with suspicion any potential replacement of my close protection officer. Anyone in my position that would have seen that your security was being transferred in this manner, in which there's no explanation, and almost as if you have no role to play in this. Anybody, whether they've worked with me in the past or not, anyone coming into that position under these circumstances and the level of politics that's being displayed would have to be looked at suspiciously by me. Because the process and the integrity of the process has been breached. As you must appreciate, my own safety and security concerns would necessitate that any officer assigned to me be someone I can trust and who's beyond approach. In light of the current circumstances, it is not unreasonable for me to object to the transfer of Officer Taliam, who has always performed his duties professionally. I am therefore requesting his reinstatement as my security detail. Notwithstanding the courtesy of our meeting during your vacation, I remain disappointed in the lack of fairness and professionalism exhibited thus far in this matter. This will do nothing to dispel my concerns of the real possibility of the demoralization, politicization, and weaponization of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. Corporal Harvey Taliam deserves better, as do I as leader of the opposition. Should your decision remain unchanged, you must know that it will set a dangerous precedent where persons who are entitled to the service of close protection detail, be they members of the legislature, executive, or judiciary, are concerned. I therefore trust, given these critical implications, that you will revisit your decision on this matter at the soonest. I've sent this letter on the 19th of January, Monday. I have not received any response to this letter, not an acknowledgement of the letter. A hard copy of the letter was also delivered to the police headquarters, so the acting commissioner would have received this. I indicated that if I had not received any response, and certainly my understanding is that Officer Taliam has also not received a response. I also have been informed and advised that Taliam has also caused his lawyer to send a letter to the deputy commissioner. And if you will give me a moment, I know that it's difficult to follow sometimes when I'm reading a letter, but I will certainly make sure that this letter is made public and made available to the media. It says that we act herein for and on behalf of our client, Corporal Harvey Taliam. We have been instructed by our client that he received a letter dated the 14th of January from the Acting Commissioner of Police, Mr. Vern Gard, advising that a sensitive incident involving his conduct had come to the attention of the Office of the Commissioner of Police. So the sensitive matter that we know of publicly is the minister who is in the Prime Minister's office. This is the same minister that I have written a letter to the Prime Minister about earlier this year, and making reference to that same minister's previous involvement in Restore Confidence, where he was in cabinet, and it was alleged in the impacts report that he was involved in the matter. The irony is at the time that he was with the United Workers' Party, and the same Labour Party, the same Philip Pierre and Kenny Anthony, Musa, Alva Baptist, said he was a criminal. In fact, Kenny Anthony went on and far and said publicly that they will have no drug barons in their cabinet, in making reference to the same Richard Frederick. Not my words. That's how the Labour Party described him. Let us not be fooled about the politics taking place in this country. This is why Richard Frederick was never and will never be accepted within the Labour Party, and ran as an independent candidate. And that there was an agreement, so much so that when the Labour Party won with 13 seats and there was no reason to bring Richard Frederick into your cabinet, they were obliged to do so. And to make it worse, they put him in the Prime Minister's office. And the Prime Minister is responsible for national security. All that has been said in my letter. At no time has the Prime Minister attempted to reprimand, hold accountable the outrageous statements that Richard Frederick is making publicly. That he has access to police files. That he can command police to do what he wants to do. And the threats that he has on citizens. Imagine a minister saying publicly that a person should be thrown in jail, as if the process that we have doesn't matter. And that very soon afterwards, some of those same persons are arrested. And here it is again, where he said that my detail was a threat to the Prime Minister. I want to put that to rest. I very rarely are in the presence of the Prime Minister. And certainly when I'm in Parliament in his presence, my security is not in Parliament with me. He's outside. So again, this is the typical half-truth fabrication that Richard Frederick practices to convince people that there's a problem. So the seriousness of this matter is made worse because of the actors involved and the history that we have with this minister. The US government revoked his personal visa and his diplomatic visa. We've seen on WikiLeaks the stories that have come out. We knew of the history of the man before. The Labour Party knows. In fact, many people believe that the reason why Kenny Anthony has not gone into Parliament, into Cabinet, is because of Richard Frederick. So this is more than hearsay. I bring this up because I want us to appreciate and understand what the consequences of his action are. Alarmingly, prior to the receipt of this said letter, our client was neither aware nor informed of the sensitive matters that had come to the attention of the Office of the Commission of Police, nor was he made aware of the specific conduct or misconduct with which he was being accused, which warranted the precipitous decision to transfer him from his post. Additionally, no meetings was held with him to discuss the decision, to explore how it might impact him or whether it was warranted at all. In the circumstances, it appears that on the basis of a complaint by an unknown accuser, Our client is effectively being disciplined by being transferred without the procedural fairness and due process and without the courtesy of the usual natural justice safeguards being applied to him. Given that decision that Mr. Guard is premised on his unknown allegation and the decision was made without consultation, it is further called into question as to whether it is a reasonable, irrational, illegal, or in excess of his authority. As I indicated, Constitution, of which we all have individually consented to, in allowing ourselves to be governed and giving these awesome powers to individuals and to the government, if remained unchecked, will be to our detriment and will destroy the same democracy that we did this for in the first place. Under these circumstances, our client has been deprived of his right to natural justice and procedural fairness and questions the legality of this decision in all the circumstances. Therefore, we hereby formally request the provision of the information that came to the attention of the Office of the Commissioner of Police in order to fully advise our client. We are further instructed that the Leader of the Opposition, to whom our client is assigned as security detail, a very serious responsibility and assignment, was not informed of his transfer. Given that we have now been retained and are in the process of providing advice to our client on this matter, we therefore request that you formally agree to stay all actions relating to his impugned transfer pending our response. I want to say that some of the unseen fallouts of this is that the same constable recently was in Castries on his own personal time at the Castries market purchasing items, and what appeared to be gang members came close to him and were heard saying, "That is the fellow that's giving the boss man problems." In my own quest to obtain alternative security, several persons that I approached that are privately involved in this declined because of their fear of what they perceive as being highly political target. And that's not from the fear of getting shot, but the fear of the consequences of being seen to be doing any work with me, the Leader of the Opposition. So I want to say to all St. Lucians, this is very, very, very serious. And the fallout to us having to question the integrity, the independence of our Commissioner of Police is frightening. And I want to say what I said to the Commissioner, because the Commissioner, I beg his indulgence, indicated to me that this was apolitical, or so that he was apolitical, and this had nothing to do with it. And I said to him, I said, "You know, sir, currently the Permanent Secretary of Tourism, of which I have an application for the last 8 months to obtain duty-free concessions for the furniture that we were bringing in to replace the furniture that we had." So this Hotel Coco Palm is 20 years old, and we were replacing the furniture. And up until today, those concessions have not been approved. And I said, she told me the same thing. This has nothing to do with politics. I said, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that took over 3.5 years to process my diplomatic passport, and eventually came to me to tell me that the passport was found in a drawer, said to me that this was nothing to do with politics. I said, we had a judge that recused him from my cases, 4 of my cases, constitutional cases, claimed that there was political interference. And that judge was then transferred to Grenada. And the Chief Justice said to me, this was not political. I said, sir, you're now asking me to believe that this is not political? We have a serious problem in this country. And I understand the fear, because we saw it with two young women who were working in a ministry. And they were accused of meeting Timothy Polion and Dominique Fede, who they happened to meet by chance, of deliberately meeting with them to transfer information. And their lives have been made hell. Both of them were immediately transferred to different ministries. And guess what happened? The ministries that they were transferred, because of the reputation that they already had obtained, sent them back. What about their rights to go to work every day and having people look at you? We saw what happened in housing. And then the minister would come and tell the public, there was a restructuring in housing and their positions were made redundant. But yet the history of those individuals is that they were giving him information when he was in opposition. So there's more to that story. But I leave that to the unions. And how many other people in this country that the government has used its powers to victimize them. So I want everyone to know, I will fight this situation and protect those two police officers. United Workers' Party will stand firm with every single person that is being victimized in this country. So again, I thank you, and I'm hopefully that this information will come to a good end, but we will stay on top of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, political leader and leader of the opposition. I do want to say that based on the information presented by the political leader and what continues to transpire in this country, that it is very scary. There is a deliberate effort, and I can say that without any fear, that there is a deliberate effort by this current Labour Party administration to silence St. Lucians by bullying them, by threatening them, by naming and shaming them, by the constant victimization of them. They don't promote them, they move them around in various departments. This is very blatant and it is really scary. We are currently in a state where it is an us versus them. And as the leader of the opposition said, that at this point in time, people do not even want to speak to members of the opposition for fear that there are other people who are watching them, taking pictures everywhere you go. St. Lucians are now watching each other, who you talk to, who you mingle with, so that they can make an assertion as to which political party you belong to. So we are no longer St. Lucians. We are no longer free to associate or to speak to anybody. It is what is now being created. I want to say to St. Lucians, in 2025, the United Workers' Party will not stand for that. We will stand up for every St. Lucian's right to affiliate with whatever political organization that they desire, whether you be Labour Party, United Workers' Party, Green Party, or no party at all. So it's just shameful, and it just brings to mind the issue with Skinny and his apartment and his wife being locked inside the apartment, a widow grieving just about 2 days after the death of her husband in her husband's apartment, and she's locked in that apartment. And yet still in every single instance, like the political leader said, we are being told it's not political, it's not political. But I think St. Lucians can see for themselves, St. Lucians can recognize that it is political and that it is deliberate. So I say to St. Lucians, you need to stand up, you need to speak out, because if we allow this to continue in this country, soon we will not have a St. Lucia that we can recognize. I'm not too sure if any members of the media have any questions. For the political leader? Sure.
Yesterday we see the inauguration of Donald Trump. matchup, and what Caribbean women can expect from the new United States president?
So he's now the president, so he's not the presumptive president anymore. And I would say to all the leaders of this region that they need to listen to his inauguration speech very carefully. There are some statements that he has made that are going to have serious implications to us in this region. And everything that he has said that he was going to do, he has done, including forgiving January 6th. He said that the new tariffs for Mexico and Canada are going to begin on February 1st. He has said that he is going to make all cartels terrorist organizations and treat with them as if they were terrorist organizations. He has declared a state of emergency on the border in Mexico and is sending down troops. So, and he's saying that, immigration starts in Mexico, which is something that he had done before. I want to say to all of us that the president is a second-term president with a reprieve in the middle. And you can see that the fact that he signed over 80 executive orders or 100 executive orders in the first 4 or 5 hours, that there is a well-oiled plan that's just going to be executed. His cabinet choices, for the most part, from my understanding, are going to be completed. Secretary of State Rubio is no stranger to this region, and he's made it very clear his position on Cuba and Venezuela. America has indicated that it's going to drill, baby, drill, and it's no longer going to be in the import business of energy. It's going to be in the export business of energy. So there's a lot to be chewed upon, and it's going to require a regional approach. Now, I would say to all of us that the urgency in which we had to act in terms of improving and strengthening our own governance and our own countries has for too long been ignored. And America is not going to be the America it was before. You saw that they withdrew from the Paris Treaty right away. So both letters to the Europeans as well as to the UN were sent off immediately, indicating of America's withdrawal to the Paris Treaty. So the resources that were being made available for climate change are not going to happen. I think that the United Workers' Party has always believed in that we need to maintain our governance and our independence by making ourselves independent. We will always depend on foreign exports, meaning that we're an export-oriented country. There are also other things, and I will certainly reserve those comments for my colleagues at the Caribbean Democratic Union. But that was an asterisk, and the Caribbean better be prepared because we need change.
Back to your meeting with the acting commissioner of police. In the letter where it stated sensitive matters towards the police officer in question, did you seek any clarity as to what those sensitive matters, and how did it come to the conclusion that that police officer or these police officers had to be written to action be taken against them?
Again, I consider the conversation I had with the commissioner to be between myself and himself. But given what has happened since then, I feel obliged to make certain details of that conversation privy, to make it public. And what I was indicated to was that there was no correlation between the suspension or the actions against Gustav as they were against Talium. I found that strange because both of them were done at the same time, and both of them are under investigation. The indication that I got from the acting commissioner was that Mr. Talium was being investigated as to determine whether he was physically and mentally able to perform his duty. Now, that's absurd, because if in fact that was the case, then the investigation ought to be done by a doctor. And I would have thought that one of the first persons that they would have contacted, if in fact that there was that concern, was that they would have contacted me. Because keep saying to my team, the Labour Party is amazing at semantics. They love semantics. So the semantic here is that the minister said they ought to be an investigation. And that's what's happened. And where there may be two different forms of investigation taking place, they've caught themselves in a trap. And like many other instances in which we've called them out, this is a classic example and one that we should not take lightly, because it's a frightening thought. I mean, Nancy, if you can pass me, there was a document I had there. Thank you. I apologize. So, all of a sudden when you see there's fire or you see there's smoke, you try to determine if there was fire. So I am now investigating the commissioner, the acting commissioner. And here it is where we had an individual, Cleveland Emmanuel, that was let go from the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. And Albert Fregis represented him in an attempt to bring it to court to get the position reversed. And they lost that case. And the new acting commissioner has rehired him. What has happened now with the investigation with the deputy commissioner? What is now happening with the DPP's mandate that the officers that were involved in the impacts on the Beige killing and also the Vieux-Fort killings be charged? So I want to let the commissioner know that we're on full alert, and every indiscretion that he commits in his office, we're going to highlight it.
My second question has to do with Galaxy. To the best of your knowledge, what is the status of that project?
There are 4 contracts that have been made public by Mr. Martinez, I think is the person who made those contracts public. At no time has anyone in the government denied that those contracts are not genuine. In fact, I would say to you the way that they've reacted, they've actually accepted that those are the contracts, and certainly talked more about how did these contracts become public rather than the content of those contracts. In the case of Galaxy and the hotel, the government in 2022 amended the contract that was signed in 2019. Okay? And in amending that contract, increased the allocation of passports from $210 million US dollars to $1 billion US dollars. Yet there was no change in the size of the project. No additional rooms, no nothing. So the same project, and the government claimed that this was because of inflation and supply chains issues. Now, in 2019, it was estimated that the hotel would have cost somewhere between $250 million and $300 million US dollars. So again, I want to say this. So the new contract in 2022 amended it and gave them now, instead of $210 million worth of passports, gave them $1 billion US dollars worth of passports, US. The second thing that happened in that amendment of that contract is that in addition to being a developer, Galaxy was also made a promoter. So it means that they were allowed to go out and sell the citizenship program. And as such, the government was going to pay them a commission. So the government agreed to pay them a commission, which was equivalent to the administrative fee, $30,000 US dollars. So on 5,000 passports, that's $150 million US dollars. So again, I want to repeat this. The contract was amended, and they were now given, instead of $210 million US dollars, they were given $1 billion US dollars. No change. And also they are now being paid a commission of $150 million US. So what does that mean? It means that the government gets nothing. So I say that to speak of the relevance and the importance of the question that you asked. What's the status of the hotel? Hotel was started in 2019. We had COVID, etc. And it's our estimation, and we just did a team down there 3 days ago. I'm happy to share the drone footage and the snapshots with you. And in speaking to some of the persons who have worked there, we estimate that the project to date has spent about no more than 30 million EC dollars. Remember, on a hotel that was supposed to cost 300 million US, and now the government has given them $1 billion. There's nothing happening at the hotel. In fact, there's no planning approval for the hotel. That the mangrove, which was designated by the UN as a special reserve area, has been destroyed. And that there are questions of the Chinese workers who are there, are they subject to the labor laws in St. Lucia? Meaning now, do they have to be paid the minimum wage? How many hours a day are they allowed to work? What are the safety measures that are on the site? So I'm going to say this to you. There's no security there. Anybody who wants to go and drive there is free to go and drive there and go through themselves. And that this is a disgrace. So I don't know if you were the reporter that yesterday asked the Prime Minister about Galaxy, of which he never answered. So the Galaxy project is a calamity, that we are going to receive no money from CIP because they're being paid the commission of the administrative fee, and we're not getting any hotel, and that the workers that are there, the vast majority of them are Chinese. The Prime Minister, I think, said that the materials are coming from China. So again, there's nothing happening here. Now, let us go and look at Mont Piedmont, who started, what, less than a year ago? And my understanding is that they're hoping to open up the first part of the hotel this summer. You have the St. James Hotel that's been going through. I mean, I'm very proud that before I left as a Prime Minister, we facilitated to help that sale of that hotel go through to an individual, Mr. Mullen, who long-standing track record, and I love to see what's taking place there. But look what's taking place there in a shorter period of time. So Canals is a disaster everywhere you look at it. And this government refuses to be held accountable for what's taking place.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for listening, St. Lucia. And we wish to end by saying that we see blatantly the hypocrisy of the St. Lucia Labour Party. We see the hypocrisy of members of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. I mean, I'm just reminded that you had a police officer in the name of Mr. Zachary Hippolyte who appeared publicly on a Labour Party talk show with Lisa Jawari, the communications officer for the St. Lucia Labour Party. And to date, I don't know that any action has been taken or questions been asked, but we now have security officials assigned to the leader of the opposition being sent on administrative leave or being transferred for perceived political affiliations. St. Lucia, stay awake, and the United Workers' Party will and always be there to support you. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.